there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday. You know, I had the strangest morning. I woke up and my phone starts, the alarm goes off at 5 a.m. so I can start doing, spooky language, spooky. Yeah, absolutely appropriate. So I wake up at 5. And my phone immediately goes off, and it's a winter storm warning. It is absolutely 100% blue sky outside. I mean, not a cloud in the sky this morning, but apparently it's spring in Wyoming, and you know we're going to have a snowstorm. Which, by the way, if we are going to have a snowstorm, you need a pair of Buffalo Wool Company socks. They're the warmest socks that I've ever put on my feet, and I'm telling you, my friends, you can't beat them. They are absolutely the finest pair of socks. And I mean, they're great in the winter, but they'll also keep you cool and dry in the summer. So today's morning segment is brought to you by the Buffalo Wool Company.
What a great idea. What a great idea for a gift for your producer.
Well, I haven't given you a pair of Buffalo Wool Company socks.
You've given me a lot of things, but not that.
Crap being most of it. So anyway, that was the winter storm warning. And then I get a notification on Facebook. You know, people you may know. And, you know, I'm sure everybody has been unfriended at one point or another, but you never really realize that you've been unfriended until the notification comes up, people you may know. And it's always people that you really couldn't give two craps about. And you don't really care if you're friends with them anyway. And so, you know, my morning started out kind of strange. And, you know, I don't know. It's Wednesday at Cowboy State Politics. We begin this morning. Oh,
so you did get my unfriend note.
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yours and a couple of other people that I really don't care about.
Yeah. Christine and I discussed that yesterday.
I'm sure you did. I'm tired of his crap. So are a lot of people. Well, if you didn't know, today is the anniversary of the assassination of President Lincoln. And I found this piece on zerohedge.com. I think it's pretty intriguing. Oh, by the way, see, I'm all screwed up this morning, which is nothing really different than any other time. But after the first break, we've got an interview with Gun Owners of America Regional Director Mark Jones. And we're going to be talking about all the crazy gun laws that Colorado has just passed. So anyway, stick with us. Well, you should stick with us all the way through the program. But Mark Jones will be here on Zoom anyway at 1:15. So we'll talk to him. But anyway, so today is the anniversary of Lincoln's assassination. And the historian in me likes to look back and see, the historical parallels to our own time. And I think this is exactly one, because we could very much claim that Lincoln was a threat to democracy, which is what this piece is entitled. And I quote, 160 years ago at Ford's Theater, John Wilkes Booth put a bullet in the head of President Abraham Lincoln. But the question is, what motivated him to do that? Was it fame? No. John Wilkes Booth had plenty of that. He was I don't know if I'd call him the Brad Pitt of the day, but he was pretty darn famous. Acclaim? Nope. Contrary to the tales you were told in school, that he was jealous of the critical raves afforded to his father Junius and his brother Edwin, Booth earned reviews any young actor would die for. He even refused to perform under his real name until he earned reviews worthy of his name. What about the Confederacy? Well, now you might be getting closer. Booth raged and despaired over the suffering incurred by the South. And actually, the truth is that John Wilkes Booth told us his motivation. And if you compare that to the assassination attempts on President Trump, we don't know about the first guy in Butler, Pennsylvania. I mean, he's still kind of a mystery. But the crazy guy that was hiding outside the golf course in Florida, we know a lot about him. And it's in many ways, it's pretty similar. So after shooting Lincoln and making his dramatic leap from the stage, Booth shouted, "Sic semper tyrannis," or "thus always to tyrants." Or to put it another way, Lincoln was a threat to democracy. Twice last summer, amid a deadly daily drumbeat from former President Biden, Democrats, and the media, that Donald Trump was a threat to democracy, a budding tyrant, as it were, two would-be assassins came very close to killing him. Ryan Routh was charged Thursday in Florida for his attempt. In a recent study, it indicated that 55% of self-described leftists think the assassination of Trump would be justifiable. Think about that. 55% of one half of the country think that it would be totally okay to kill the president. That is a shocking number. How far we have fallen. Everyone across the globe, from the youngest to the oldest, and this is a quote from that piece, know that Trump is unfit to be anything, much less U.S. president. And this is Ryan Routh that wrote that. The rhetoric is, all through the roof. And I think to some degree it's calmed down a little bit, unless, of course, your name is James Carville. James Carville, I don't think that he's threatened to kill the president, but he certainly said some crazy stuff. In fact, I've got a great soundbite later on in the program. But here's what I want to lead you with. And this is what made me convinced me to lead with this piece. Just listen to this last part of it. Quote, "With the war over and the comedy romp Our American Cousin playing out beneath him, did Lincoln see in Booth's card a golden opportunity?" Because John Wilkes Booth sent the card up to the gallery where Abraham Lincoln was sitting. We don't really know what was written on the card, but Booth was, a pretty famous actor. So, we can surmise that his card said something like, "Hey, Lincoln, I'll help you out," or something like that. But think about that. You have a famous actor. Lincoln is working on Reconstruction, and here may have been a golden opportunity. Now, Booth not only killed the president, but all hopes for a gentle reconciliation with the South. How much better for his beloved South had Booth pulled up a chair instead of a pistol? And I think that is the point. There are a number of what I would consider Democrats that have reached out here in Sheridan, and they just want to sit down and have a cup of coffee, which, of course, I'm absolutely willing to do. The point of the Republican Party, or any party really, is to bring more people in. And, just because we don't agree doesn't mean that we can't have a conversation. And I think that's the point here, is that we have to get back to a place where we can talk to each other. And, as difficult as that may seem, I see that is the best course. For example, not that long ago on the podcast, I interviewed Gabriel Green. I think that we disagree on a whole bunch of stuff, but I sat down and did an interview with him. I absolutely would love it if we could get a couple Democrats on the show. Hey, Agent 29, work on that. You know some of the Democrats down there, so hook us up with one. But here's where this whole thing is leading. And I've got a video of Senate President Bo Beitman talking about emails. And it's I want you to listen to what he says, because frankly, I found it kind of ticked me off a little bit. So anyway, here it is.
To respond to that, Mr. Chairman, if you want your email to be seen, send me an original email from your email address. Problem solved. We're talking about spam, right? Spam means a bulk email sent unsolicited. That's the definition of spam, correct? Correct. Okay, so we have spam filters to filter out spam. But it's not being blocked. I'm looking at my junk filter or
Okay. All right. We're going to stop right there for a minute. I know for a 100% fact that there are emails that are blocked in the legislative system. My emails. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to read my emails, but what I'm telling you is I know for a fact that many new legislators, people that I had never really talked to before, that I had sent interview requests to, I'd talk to them later. Hey, did you get my email? No. I didn't see anything like that. Have you checked your spam folder? Sure enough, there it is. And in some cases, it ends up in quarantine. So, I mean, what Bo Beitman is saying right there, to some degree, is bullcrap. And if you want to, and by the way, Bo Beitman is the single most difficult person to get a hold of in the Wyoming legislature. The guy hardly ever returns a phone call. And I mean, I personally, before I exposed Bo Beitman for giving the entire Senate away to the Redcoats, I still couldn't get a hold of him, and he's my senator. So, I mean, listen very carefully to what he's saying. Now, let's continue.
spam filter right now, it's full of emails with the exact same contact or info at blankactionalerts.org. And there's hundreds of them. And they all say the exact same thing. You've read one, you've read them all. So then you can read one and delete the rest. That's
Okay,
spam.
now it's this
The
last
system's
part.
working.
It's this
The
last part that you want to
quarantine, I
listen
check
to.
periodically. Sometimes actual emails from actual constituents get caught up in quarantine. Hit release, mark as safe, problem solved. There is no problem here, people. So I'm on and against this for that reason, because we've got the tools we need to make sure everybody's being heard, but to the point that we want to make sure somebody's getting through that needs to get through. If you want to get through, pick up the phone and call me, number one, text me, number two, or email me from your actual email address, and I guarantee you'll get through.
I guarantee you won't get through to Bo Beitman. And that is the point. And I want to, Ken, I want to get your perspective on this, because you've been right in the middle of this. You're a legislator. You get a ton of emails. But here's my argument, and you tell me if I'm off base here. That there's a person behind every single one of those emails. And it is hard enough getting a hold of you guys that, some people, like, that's the only thing that they can do, right? So they get an email that they like or that they agree with. Okay, copy, paste, send it on its way. And I realize, your email account's probably chock full of different stuff. But, I think that the volume of emails is a direct reaction to people's voices not being heard. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, we are partially.
Fair enough.
We are, excuse me again. We're a citizen legislature. We don't have any staff down there. Some people have a spouse. Representative Bratton, for example, has a spouse that helps her a lot with those. Others, I know Mark Jennings, Dana was always there to help. I told my wife she didn't have to do this. She has been willing to do that. But I've always been, this is my thing. This is what I got myself into. I'm not going to necessarily commit you. The point is, though, you do not have time to go through 600-700 emails every day by yourself. If somebody out there knows how to do that, please come show me, because 3 sessions under my belt and I can't keep up. The problem for me that was frustrating was for a long time, the email box would fill up and I would miss important emails from LSO. For example, I had a bill ready to go, whatever. So yeah, I'm getting signals here. That was frustrating. Well, a large part of what Bo said was accurate, and that we do have a lot of tools. The problem is that most of us don't really understand how to use them. So I went to LSO and I said, I really need some help here. I'm missing important emails. And they were able to set it up so that my email box will separate out those sent from other legislators or from the LSO. And they will also do some other things for me. That helps tremendously. I understand Bo's frustration. I I guess I would just tie it up and say this. If you really want to get somebody's attention, don't just forward one of the routine ones. You get sometimes 200 of them. Another thing you'll do is you find people that'll sit there and send out 30 of them in a day on 30 different topics that they've copied and pasted from somewhere. Those tend to be dismissed. But I've had people call me, leave a message. I do get back to them. I've had emails come in that you can tell by the tagline that they've spent a little bit of time on and that they're concerned with. Those do get my attention, and I do go through there looking for those. But it's an issue, and I'd say one of the problems is a lot of people that are frankly just spamming. They're just sending stuff out. They're not even aware of whether the bill's even been addressed yet or anything.
All right. So, I mean, I get that. There's probably some of that, but I still go back to, hey, man, it's kind of your job. And to just say that this is not a problem, I think is I don't believe that for a second. Well, let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we're going to have an interview with Gun Owners of America Regional Director Mark Jones. And we're going to be talking about the Colorado laws that have just been passed that are taking away the Second Amendment. I don't know how they can possibly do that, but they are. So let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll come back with Mark Jones. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia, Nova Scotia. I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland, France. Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the feeling like I do. I'm stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is expanding at lengths that I didn't even think was possible. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble. Don't forget about the Cowboy State Politics podcast. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy state politics microphone. I have with me Gun Owners of America Regional Director Mark Jones. Mark, welcome to the program.
Hey, David. I had to get my video started there. Thank you. Good to be here this morning, David, and great to see you again. And just one correction, I'm a national director.
National director, not regional. Sorry, didn't mean to demote you.
No, don't demote me this morning. Thank you.
All right.
Great to see you, though.
Yeah, man. Welcome back to the program. By the way, you're the first live guest that we've had on the live program. So, good for you.
Well, I'm honored to be here. I've always enjoyed coming on your show, so it's good to see you this morning.
So I guess where I'd like to start is real quick. Why don't you tell my audience, what a national director for Gun Owners of America does?
Well, there's only about 8 of us, and my main job is to run our national hunting programs across the country. That's under the Biden administration. We were constantly on the defensive, trying to stop things like his ban on hunter safety in schools, archery, shooting sports in schools, which many people didn't realize those had been around since 1965. School boards had the opportunity to have those. And Biden tried to ban them. We were constantly fighting things like that during the Biden years. Now that Trump's in, the pressure's kind of gone off on a lot of those types of things. And I've been working more. We're on the offensive now, trying to repeal some of ATF's draconian policies that Biden established, trying to clean up some things. The president asked Pam Bondi, the attorney general, to look into Second Amendment infractions that occurred during Biden's term. Actually didn't ask her, he told her in an executive order. And the outcome of that is hopefully going to be a series of changes that will be implemented by the federal agencies and the Trump administration to roll back some Second Amendment infringements. So we're kind of on the offensive right now in that regard. And then the other thing that a lot of people in Wyoming know me from, I guess, is my work in the Wyoming legislature. I do work there when they're in session, and in the off season work with Wyoming legislators to try to work for good Second Amendment legislation here in the Cowboy state. So that it keeps me busy. There's always something going on. When Biden was in, we were on the defensive, and now that Trump's in, we're on the offensive, it seems like.
All right. Well, speaking of being on the offensive, I'm kind of thinking we may need to erect our own wall on our own southern border, because there's a lot of scary stuff happening in Colorado. I mean, I'm looking at an article right here that it pretty much says that Colorado doesn't care about the Second Amendment anymore. Can you tell us what's going on there?
Yeah, so they've been actually rolling back their Second Amendment protections for several years, and this last bill that just passed, that was signed by Governor Paulus, is probably the worst of the worst. It pretty much bans the sale, possession, purchase of most semi-automatic weapons after August of 2026. That will include anything with a detachable magazine, the way it's written, and there are very few of these that don't have detachable magazines. So it's going to cover even 22 rifles with a detachable magazine.
Right, like a 1022 or.
Right. They're targeting AR-15s and AK-47s and things like that, but they're capturing more. And also what they're doing with this, they're establishing a government permission system where you can take a course, get an eligibility card in order to possess certain weapons. The government giving you permission, which shouldn't be happening. The Second Amendment's a fundamental right. Sheriffs have broad authority to deny these cards, and after the card, there's a series of training and costs. In the Bruin decision, the Supreme Court decision from a few years ago, they upheld an individual's right to possess weapons without unnecessary infringements and to possess them in public. And this, in some ways, looks to me like a violation of the Bruin decision, but a lot of this will have to be sorted out in the courts if it is taken to court. But it's a pretty draconian law that our neighbor to the south has passed. I
mean, it shocked me. Honestly, Mark, when I went to college in I guess it'd be the early 2000s at Regis University, I mean, Colorado was a lot like Wyoming, except they had more people and, and a football team I'm no longer a fan of. By the way, did you know why Wyoming doesn't have a football team?
You mean a professional one?
Yeah.
Is this a joke?
Yeah, because Colorado would want one too. Anyway, so
I hadn't heard that.
All right. So what, Gun Owners of America, they're probably the number one organization in filing lawsuits against, Second Amendment violations. So have you guys filed a lawsuit yet on any of Polis's law?
We haven't in Colorado yet. Those things usually take time. You have to find a plaintiff that's been aggrieved. That would mean denied their right by this law. We filed them in other states with similar laws. We filed one in New York where the governor there was defying the Bruin decision. It was a different type of thing where she was doing it through executive order rather than legislation that passed. So I think it's possible that us and other groups could file a lawsuit there. We just have to wait and see how everything shakes out. But we have filed a lot of lawsuits at both the state level and when Biden was in, it seemed like almost every day against him for executive orders. So we will see how this situation plays out in Colorado, but it puts them right up there with California and New York with some of the most draconian laws in the country.
Well, it seems to me that whatever Colorado or California does, we should do the exact opposite. So are you working on any legislation for this upcoming legislative session in 2026?
I actually have been. Since the session ended, I've had some meetings with some of the leadership in the legislature to discuss what didn't work and needs to be fixed or whatever. Obviously, the one that most people would know about was governor vetoing the Second Amendment Protection Act amendments. And those were additions to the existing Second Amendment Protection Act legislation that started out bad that actually hurt the Second Amendment. We were able to get it amended in the House and the Senate to the point where we could support it, and it passed, and then the governor vetoed it. I've had some discussions with leadership in the legislature about coming back with that legislation next year. Also, there was a really good financial privacy bill that was run by a representative from Natrona County that would protect your privacy when you buy firearms. That bill passed overwhelmingly in the House and it failed in the Senate 17-14. That will be coming back as well. There's also some interest from some legislators to lower the age to buy a handgun in Wyoming and things like that. We support those kind of things. Obviously believing the Second Amendment's a fundamental right. If you're old enough to go off to war for your country, you should be old enough to buy a firearm. So I think that you may see that, which is something that I don't think we saw in the past. So there are some things cooking. The good news, though, David, as you well know, we got the repeal of gun-free zones passed this year and got it past the governor.
That's awesome. That
was awesome. He did not veto it this time like he did last year. So that's good news. We become probably the fifth state, I would think, with a law very similar to that. That gets rid of most gun-free zones. One of the interesting things I found about that was some of the people that opposed it kind of cried the sky was falling. And there were 4 other states that have already done this and had done it, some of them for many years. Actually, New Hampshire for its whole history. So this is not anything new, but it does put Wyoming there in the top 5, I think. So that's good news.
All right. I've seen online a little bit of confusion about what House Bill 172 actually does. And I mean, it's pretty simple. It sounds simple to me, but real quick, could you just give us the Cliff Notes version of what that bill does?
Okay. The big point of confusion you probably saw is when people are confused about what can happen at schools. I've seen rhetoric about people carrying dangerous looking weapons in open football games. And that's not going to happen. The Federal Gun-Free Zones Act had an exemption in it for a state-issued permit. And Wyoming's exemption is the concealed carry permit. So the only legal way to carry around a school will be if you have a lawfully issued Wyoming concealed carry permit. That means the weapon will be concealed. So some of the rhetoric that I've seen has been, well, people will be carrying shotguns in the football stadium. No, they have to lawfully carry a concealed weapon and keep it concealed. So, and they will have been through the vetting process. That is the only way people can carry at school. Otherwise, you're violating the federal law, not just Wyoming law. The other changes will allow carry in our capital, which we're the only capital in the Northern Plains and Northern Rockies that hasn't allowed people to carry firearms. I mean, they carry them in Helena and Pierce, South Dakota, and so we're going to kind of get in line with that and let the people carry in their capital, for goodness sakes. That will also have to be concealed the way the law was written. It will also open up gun-free zones in some of them. It'll stop like buildings that are government funded from restricting your rights. If you go pay your taxes, they won't be able to restrict you from carrying your firearm in there. So it essentially opens up a lot of gun-free zones that have been here in Wyoming for years. It doesn't open up jails, prisons, common sense things like courtrooms, those kind of things. But I will point out in other states, like New Hampshire's never restricted firearms carry in these places. And Utah has opened it up for the last 30 years. So we actually think it will make people safer, not less safe, but it also restores a fundamental right. The Second Amendment is a fundamental right. It's not a secondary right,
Absolutely. I mean, it's and a lot of the rhetoric just kind of blew my mind that, like you said, the sky is falling and, schools are going to be this, open season, no pun intended. But anyway, thanks for explaining that. Mark, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Best way would probably be email Mark with a K, mark.jones@gunowners.org. And just mark.jones@gunowners.org, and I'll respond and call you if necessary. You can also go to our website at gunowners.org and look at all the things we're doing. A lot of exciting stuff going on with President Trump now because of his executive order to protect the Second Amendment and some of the things he's willing to do, if either through executive order or if Congress will pass legislation, he said he will sign it. So it's an exciting time right now to roll back some of the Biden era infringements.
Absolutely. And there's a whole mountain of them. Well, Mark, I appreciate you taking the time this morning to talk to me, and I'm sure we'll be talking in the future.
Thanks for having me on your show, David. I always enjoy it.
All right. Thanks. When we come back from the break, we're going to continue on with Cowboy State Politics and our conversation about, your emails. I got more to say about that. And John Baer had a pretty good response in the Management Council meeting. So we're going to do that right after the break. How many people we got? Let's get
Here at U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing
Well, I'm
power
gonna
of
redo that
U.S.
anyways.
paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital.
What was that?
For
Pretty
more than
smooth.
35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us
No, I
at
think it was good.
1-800-878-2646
Pretty pleased that it was smooth
or
and-
visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Should have kind of got some coffee.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time to give up on the values that made our state
podcast
great
ready, which
to
I'm going to
accommodate
chop up
toxic culture.
this one.
I say it's time to stand tall
Then
and
I have
protect the
a
values
Zoom meeting at
that
1
have served
o'clock.
Wyoming well for over 134 years.
Not really.
Join Honor Wyoming as we
Steve Bray
defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life.
Netrona, he wants to put together a website.
Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. A shout out to a friend of ours, Josh Jennings. He has a #1 book on Amazon. It's called Timmy the Tapeworm, and it's it's #1 on. Let's see here it is. Yeah, Timmy the Tapeworm, #1 in the conversation entertainment adult. What is it, Ken?
I don't remember the title exactly. It was like short adult humor. This is not a kid's book.
No, well, I mean,
it's a quick read.
Even though it's a crazy, crazy category, I don't have a #1 book. And apparently our buddy, Josh, he writes a book about a tapeworm, and he gets a #1 book.
Kind of says something about it. We can't even win the Wyoming podcast thing.
Oh, that's because we don't enter. Right?
Yeah,
We don't want to be up there with the cow pie. That's so superficial. But anyway,
that out.
Here's the synopsis on Timmy the Tapeworm. Timmy the Tapeworm lives in a comfy little home down in the belly of his good friend Jimmy. Everything that Jimmy eats or drinks, he shares with Timmy. And Timmy likes to party hard. But Timmy doesn't have anything to share back with Jimmy. Or does he? Anyway, congratulations to our friend Josh Jennings. Timmy the Tapeworm, #1 on some category on Amazon. We don't even have any idea what that is. So before Mark Jones, we were talking about emails in the Wyoming legislature, and our pal Agent 29 over here gets a ton of them, and I'm sure that they're irritating. Well, Bo Beitman wants you to believe that that's all spam. We get a whole bunch of them, and we just ignore them.
Just a sec. That's all irritating. I do remember the comment that you made that has been made before. Behind each one of those is a person.
Yes, that's exactly where I'm going.
And that is important. So I guess I fall somewhere in the middle. Yes, on the surface, I'm irritated. I don't want to have to deal with these, and you got to deal with them every day, or you just get swamped. And that's something I don't particularly enjoy. But I signed up for this.
Yeah, there you go. And that's the point. Well, John Bear had a pretty good response in that same meeting. And it's, he makes the point that, it is, there is a person behind every one of these emails. Hold on here. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to say one last thing. We can call things spam because it looks the same, but there are many of these organizations that are attempting to make it easier for constituents. They're informing them of an issue, and then they're gathering their information and helping them get word to us. And it may look like spam to us, but there are individuals behind each of those messages that have stated to those organizations that, yes, I want this to change. And it's important that we hear that. Would I like to have individual emails drafted? Yeah, I'd like to draft individual emails back to respond to all those people too. But I don't always get what I want. But what I would like is more public participation. And I don't want to put any kind of barriers up to that. And I consider this a barrier.
All right. So exactly right. So it is a barrier, right? What they're talking about is keeping this spam filter in place. And what this all goes back to is there was a couple of organizations statewide that we're pretty sure that all of their emails went into the spam folder. And there was a bill or two of them. There may even have been an amendment to the budget. I'm not sure. I mean, there was so much stuff that was happening then, but there were a couple of attempts to sort of rein this in, to say that the spam filter, couldn't do that.
Yeah, I have to say this because I was involved in that. Some of these organizations contacted me and said, have you received these? And I said, no. And we went and tracked them down and figured out what was going on. And I went to the IT guys at LSO, explained what was going on. And I have to say this, they were very good about correcting that, about trying to make right. Doesn't mean that the bill or the legislation shouldn't have been brought to kind of codify that and make sure that future generations don't violate it.
Exactly right. And John Bear had I think his point was well taken, that you may think it's spam. It may look like spam, but there's an individual behind that message. And whether or not the message gets crafted properly or is in the right format or whatever Bo Beitman was saying, that doesn't really matter. What matters is you're an elected representative and it's your job. And I realize you get 600 emails a day. It's a big job, but that's the one you signed up for. And so, my advice is you need to be involved in your government. And, you hear the comment all the time that, well, if you don't vote, you got no reason to complain. It goes a lot farther than that. You have to be involved in your government, or you're just going to be run over. And it's I one of the reasons that Cowboy state politics started is that I was tired of being lied to. I'd read the newspaper or online, and I'd see something that my legislator told the newspaper, and I'd know for a fact that was bull crap. And so I started the program to try to do something. And I'm telling you, if you're not involved in your government, your government's definitely going to be involved in your life. So you may as well have a positive influence. Well, anyway, I mean, that's my 2 cents on it. And moving on the program here. Let's see what else do I have in the stack of stuff. Oh, yeah. Migrants. What they call migrants. Illegal aliens is what that is. So Chris Van Hollen, he says that he's going to go to El Salvador and he is going to try to talk to this MS-13 gang member that was deported. And by the way, I saw on the news last night that this guy has had deportation orders since 2011. Let's go ahead and play cut number 3. Here's Chris Van Hollen.
Kate, it's good to be with you. I did request it. I've not heard back from the president of El Salvador. And as I said in that letter, if I don't hear from him and Abrego Garcia is not quickly returned, I do intend to go to El Salvador this week to show solidarity with his family. As you indicated, the Trump administration itself has admitted that he was abducted and sent to this prison in error, and he should get his due process.
He's not a citizen.
Who is Chris Van Hollen, and why should I care what he thinks?
Yeah, Chris Van Hollen's a senator, and I think he's from Maryland. And to answer your other question, we don't really give a crap what he thinks. But he is one of these radical Democrats that wants all of these illegal aliens that are being deported, that many of whom have had deportation orders for years, to get due process. But the thing is, the Biden administration overwhelmed our immigration system by just opening up the floodgates. And now we've got millions of people, illegal aliens in the country with no right to be here. And there are radical Democrats and radical judges that are claiming that all these folks have to go through the court system. From Breitbart News, federal judge blocking Trump from deporting Biden's migrants has past ties to, you guessed it, Democrats. We can't have a fair judge anymore. Here's what this piece says. Quote, United States District Court Judge Indira Talwani, appointed by Barack Obama, has past ties to Democrats and ruled against immigration enforcement in the first Trump administration. This week, she blocked President Donald Trump from deporting migrants who were released into the United States interior via Sleepy Joe Biden's parole pipeline. The decision by Talwani to prevent Trump from ending Biden's parole pipeline, thus preventing the administration from deporting more than 530,000 migrants with no legal status in the United States, is among the many from the Democrat-appointed federal judges who have halted the White House from implementing its agenda.
So you just said in reading that, no legal status.
Yeah.
So this question of due process, what are the rights of citizenship? I mean, obviously we get to vote. One of them should be due process. If you're not a citizen, if you broke the law and came into this country of your own accord against the law, you don't have rights.
Exactly right. I mean, by the first moment you were in this country, you've broken our law. And now there's radical Democrats in the House, in the Senate, and they're saying that all of these people need due process. Well, Stephen Miller I believe he was out in front of the White House during a press gaggle, and he brought up the point that if we gave due process, which, by the way, these folks are not entitled to, but if we did, it would take centuries. Play cut number 7.
So we're not going to apologize for doing something about that. And I just wish we lived in a country where the media gave 1/10 a damn as much about Americans who were murdered and brutalized and savagely killed, beaten to death, as they did about whether illegal aliens that we all agree are illegal aliens should get 1 million days in court and 1 million trials and 1 million this and 1 million that. There's 15 million illegal aliens that violate into the country. If every one of them got the trial that you're asking for, it would take us centuries to remove them.
Okay.
Centuries.
Perfect.
We'd be talking about this.
So, I mean, we've got, I don't know how many million illegal aliens in this country, but it is millions. So if all of them had 1 day in court, I mean, we are talking about, like he said, a century, which, by the way, they don't have any right to due process in the country. They are not United States citizens. One of the benefits of being a U.S. citizen is you do get due process. But when the very first thing you do when you get in our country is break the law, or even getting into the country is breaking the law, I mean, I see no reason why we shouldn't just deport these people all the way. Well, let's go ahead and take our third break. And when we come back, we'll continue. And I'm a little excited. I think we need a little baseball zen. We'll do that. Then we'll talk about James Carville coming up next. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Did you watch my Texas Rangers last night? Yeah, they're finally back in the win column. In fact, I think after last night's victory over the what is it, Los Angeles Angels? They move around so much in Colorado, or in California, or I don't know. I mean, maybe it's like our just left coast. Anyway, they beat the Angels last night, and I mean, there were some crazy plays. One of them, Corey Seager, got called out for interfering with a defender. I haven't seen that one in a while. And there's this little run that started with a stolen base.
Stolen bunt again, drops it first base side. Kikuchi's down the hill, and he does throw it past first base. Taveras reaches for the bunt single. He's running, and he's got his sixth stolen base. He'll hop up, head to third on the wild throw into center field. So a bunt single and the speed kills. A steal and an E2.
And we're seeing the Angels throw the ball around a little bit because that's exactly what speed does.
2-1, and that ball is smashed deep out to left field. Ward back near the wall, and he will leap up and make the catch. Taveras tags, he scores. That's about as long as you can hit a sacrifice fly to left field, and the Rangers will take it, up 1-0.
I feel so much better. You know, nothing relaxes me quite like baseball. Well, that and my Texas Rangers winning. Anyway, so I mentioned before the break that we're going to talk about James Carville. And the only reason I continue to bring him up is just to show you how far the Democrats have fallen. Of course, it was James Carville who said that it's the economy, stupid. For a long time, the guy from Louisiana was the go-to politico for a lot of Democrats. I think that he had the right instincts. Certainly, he got Bill Clinton elected twice, even after an impeachment. So he did have some political chops. But now he's suggesting that maybe the Democrats do need a schism. Maybe there are some that are just too radical. Couldn't play cut number 5.
Republicans, mostly in general, are contemptuous people that have terrible ideas that have been proven wrong time and time
all
again.
the time. Yeah, always wrong.
And so how does the progressive urban identity left live in the same universe as the pragmatic governing left of center people? Most of them happen to be elected officials. And maybe the answer is we can't.
Oh, there it is.
I'm
All right.
suggesting that maybe after I saw what happened on April 7th with American Voices, after, in my opinion, which was just devastating and to somewhat humiliating defeat, and particularly unnecessary defeat that we had. And in my view, I'm certainly open to have, people can call me back. I'd be glad to interview you. That your wildly naive and impractical worldview is not consistent with electoral majorities. So maybe we need to have a schism. Maybe
there it is. Finally.
When you're skirting the truth, you have to choose your words really carefully.
Oh boy. But the reason I bring this up is even one of the, and I wouldn't call him the foremost, mind in the Democrat Party, because I don't really think they have a mind most of the time. But one of the more prominent thinkers in the Democrat Party, even he is admitting that maybe the Democrats need a schism. Why that's important is it shows you the hypocrisy of the left. Because for the longest time, the Democrats embraced the radical left because it was absolutely the opposite of Republicans, because it showed a contrast. And we went through 4 years of Joe Biden where everything had to be woke. It was the LGBTQ agenda all over the place. And I mean, it everywhere you turned, you had to be woke. And it infiltrated our schools. It infiltrated our local government. It infiltrated everything. I mean, you even had Bud Light try to throw up the trans Dylan Mulvaney, thinking that was going to fly. Well, obviously that didn't fly for them because, we said that we had enough. I don't drink anymore, but a lot of Bud Light drinkers were like, not doing that. And it wasn't even like an advertising scheme. It was just kind of a, hey, we're gonna make a can with this guy's picture on it. But everything was infiltrated by the left, by their woke agenda. And now James Carville is saying, maybe that wasn't such a good idea.
A lot of people don't know this, but that whole Dylan Mulvaney thing, that was Modelo's idea.
Wow. A brilliant marketing decision, if it was. But my point here is that now, once the Democrats have been beaten to a pulp, and the Republicans have taken over everything, only now are they saying, well, maybe that wasn't such a good idea, and we need to have a split. We need to have a schism. What they are trying to do is divorce themselves from the radicals in their party that they allowed to take power. Now, think about the two of the more prominent Democrats, Bernie Sanders and AOC. They're the ones that are out campaigning all over the country, advocating for communism and socialism, or whatever it is that they're advocating for. But the Democrats allowed the more radical of their party to become more prominent, to push the woke and leftist agenda. And now they can't get away from it. And so what James Carville is seeing is Bernie and AOC out in Colorado campaigning, and he doesn't know what to do with it, because the Democrats went too far, and now they're trying to rein it back in, trying to say, whoa, I think we went too far to the left, and it's only because they were roundly rejected in the last election. And, it is just further evidence that the Democrats never really tell you the truth, because, in the beginning, it's everything has to be woke. Companies were going all, with their ESG, the DEI, all of it. Universities had huge DEI departments. At the University of Wyoming, in 1 year, their DEI and their multicultural affairs department spent $1.6 million, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in Wyoming terms, that's a heck of a lot of money. So the Democrats' play to turn everything woke ended up backfiring on them, and only now are they going to back away from it because they realize that they've been roundly rejected. Which reminds me, I've got a great piece here from Franklin Graham, and if it's okay with, of course it's okay with me. It's my program. We're going to go a little bit long, but this is a great piece from Franklin Graham, and it's entitled "Franklin Graham on Trump: The White House's Holy Week. What a contrast!" Now, hearken back to Easter during the Biden administration, when on Easter, Joe Biden declared it the Transgender Day of Visibility. Everybody remember that? It's no longer the day that Christ rose from the grave. Under Joe Biden, it was the Transgender Day of Visibility. And I quote, Christian evangelicist Franklin Graham praised the Trump administration for devoting the week to recognizing the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus Christ, contrasting that with what occurred last year as former President Joe Biden made sure to highlight the Transgender Day of Visibility, which fell on Easter. Quote, "What a contrast to Easter last year at the White House, when Biden declared the most holy day of the year on the Christian calendar, Transgender Day of Visibility." He pointed out a piece highlighting the Holy Week plans of the Trump White House this year, which include a Holy Week proclamation, a special presidential video message, and they're going to host a pre-Easter dinner at the White House and a staff Easter service. Let's see here. That was detailed by Jennifer Korn, the faith director at the White House Faith Office. Korn told Fox News Digital that it will be a special time of prayer and worship at the White House to be shared with Americans celebrating the week leading up to Resurrection Sunday. And let's see here. Graham is expected to take part in the staff worship service taking place at the White House on Thursday, alongside Pastor Greg Laurie and some others. Indeed, last year, Transgender Day of Visibility fell on Easter Sunday, and former President Joe Biden chose to highlight it, issuing a proclamation to the effect to take place on Easter. Absolutely incredible. Now, and it's things like this, pieces like this, that make me reflect on where we began as a country and where we're at now. And hopefully we're getting back to that. But, some of our earlier presidents, George Washington issued multiple proclamations to ask for a day of prayer. Abraham Lincoln did the same thing. Most of our early presidents did. And we went from that to completely rejecting one of our fundamental values in this country. And anybody that claims that this country wasn't based on Judeo-Christian principles is absolutely off their rocker, because it absolutely was. Even the least religious of the founders, and they were all pretty religious, but even the one that, most people would say, all right, out of all of them, Benjamin Franklin was probably the least religious. Even he called for prayer in the Constitutional Convention. So don't tell me that this country wasn't based on Judeo-Christian principles. And, you can go all the way back to the Mayflower and the Puritans. The reason they came over here was for religious freedom. They left Holland for that very reason. Oh, and most people don't know this. I'm sure you did, Agent 29, but, they didn't leave England. It was Holland that they left, because they first went to Holland trying to get some freedom to practice their religion, and that didn't work out. And so they came over here.
I thought they came over here for turkey and corn on the cob.
Yes, I'm sure you were told that in your government indoctrination building, but that's not exactly how it happened. And the truth is that the left has been very successful in a lot of respects, but probably one of the most damaging ones is in our education system. They've taken the history of our country and perverted it to fit their own agenda. And that's something that we've got to change. And hopefully, with the Trump administration, we will be able to reverse or turn around our education system and get back to actually teaching kids what actually happened. But I'm ecstatic to find out that the Trump administration is going to be doing several events during Easter. And, and if you haven't, if you don't have plans for Easter, I highly encourage you. I'm sure there's plenty of them taking place in your community. Go to church, my friends. Go to church. Well, that'll do it for today's installment of Cowboy State Politics. Don't forget about the podcast, which has probably come out about noon today. But for now, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. We'll see you tomorrow.